Hello, and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by the best colleagues that money can buy. We just don't get paid. Wil Masisak, you know him as Bradshaw to Ben, and Korey Karbowsky, you know him as Corey39. Well, gentlemen, we came out of Vegas. We pushed all the chips in, and they won the big prize at the end of the day. So left Vegas with a little bit of money, maybe a few roster bonuses. I don't know how those are set up, but anyway, escaped Vegas with a win. I will be honest, I was shocked that we scored 30. I think my prediction was like barely over the 30 combined points together. So the fact that we actually scored 30 was obviously an anomaly. It's only the fourth time we've done it since 2021, since Ben's retired, I think. So yeah, it was nice to actually see the offense do something. I guess, or was it more the Raiders helping us out when we needed it the most? But
Well,
anyway,
and the officials, you got to don't miss them because they really worked hard for this outcome.
they did. They did a lot. I was telling Korey before the call, lots of penalties on both sides. Some drive killing ones for or more drive extending ones for the Steelers and drive killing ones for the Raiders. Thought our defensive line and outside backers got nice pressure. It was good to see that. I don't think I quite realized how bad the Raiders are. that they truly are pretty horrific. Evidenced by a former Raider that we're going to actually play this week since he's found a new home. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But what are some of your guys' takeaways from the Raiders game? Korey, go for it.
I think, at least from the Raiders game, it's we can still beat the teams that aren't very good. I mean that's always never a given with a Tomlin team. That we're always good for a couple questionable losses a year. I think the stuff that's really interesting, which we're probably going to get to more later, it's just how this QB situation's playing itself out. It's just this game at least, Fields didn't look horrible, I don't think. So that's why, it gets a little more interesting every week with how this goes. But, I've seen people talk, not to be a Debbie Downer, overall good game. But, Patrick Queen, statistically, pretty good game. Probably the best game he's played. Still not sure, if it was better than the game played on the other end. And so, I think didn't really change much for me. Raiders were clearly not very good, but it's a good win. It was a clean win, and it was one of those ones where put up more points than I kind of expected. Got a little weird with the penalties, but this is one that if you want to be a playoff team and want to get a good seed, you got to win these ones. So
Sure, Will. Kind of any thoughts from this past?
Well, just quickly on the penalties, because I do think it made quite a bit of difference. I think it negated the officiating negated two scores for the Raiders that they ended up not getting. It opened the door for two turnovers, and it took a turnover away. The illegal man downfield penalty against the Raiders was definitely incorrect. I watched the play many times. You can see that the offensive lineman, his rear foot is only. It's just like the illegal forward pass. Any part of his body is within a yard of the line of scrimmage, and he's legal. Which especially if he's engaged with another player. But in this case, his foot never went beyond that. So the furthest downfield he ever was a couple inches shy of a yard, and that took away a touchdown. That then they turned the ball over after that. The roughing the passer against Fields, where that one was really questionable. The first one with the body weight, they're going to call that whether or not you think it's a good penalty or should be a penalty or not. It's something that the league typically calls, but the one where Fields supposedly he fell over. Basically, one guy engaged, grabbed him, and he fell over another defender who was just there. It wasn't like the other guy was hitting him, and that was that was the play that he threw the interception. So it's kind of like I love the announcer saying, Justin Fields has done everything he's expected to. He just hasn't made any mistakes. It's like he threw the ball to the other team. It's not like the roughing the passer made him throw the ball to the other team. So these things definitely are the difference between a close game, the way the Steelers normally play, and like I said, that's a couple scores, a couple turnovers. probably, at least a 10-point swing in the game. So that being said, they put up the points against a bad team. They ran the ball against a bad team that can't stop the run, but that's what you're supposed to do. We would have been giving them hell if they hadn't been able to be successful running the football against a team that can't stop the run. So is what it is. As Korey said, I think he put it correctly. We didn't really learn much from this game. It was probably, honestly, if we learned anything, it was a little concerning that the Steelers' passing offense didn't really do much in this game. While the game was close, they had like 100 yards of passing, maybe even maybe something less than that, because they had the long throw to Pickens late in the game when it was pretty much decided at that point, and the Raiders were kind of sitting on trying to stop the run. So I don't know. We learned a little bit. They won a game, but things are really getting interesting this week, and part of it is because of the way that they won and the way their quarterback has played.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely not a lot to take away from this game. I think you guys kind of hit on the head. We did what we needed to do, what we expected we were able to do outside of the passing element. We were hoping we'd see more of that. But, I think as long as Justin Fields is behind center, we kind of have to get used to the idea that he's going to sometimes make those big passing plays, but most of the time, it's going to kind of be short and choppy when it comes to our passing offense. There's going to be throws that he sees and throws, others that he doesn't see and won't throw a guy open. So I just think the passing game we're kind of stuck where we are until we see a philosophy change on how we're going to attack teams. And I think they beat it into his head. Don't turn the ball over. Don't get aggressive. Well, like you said, he did turn the ball over, just got lucky that gets called back. So, well, with that being said, I think it's fair that we can kind of move on from the Raiders game. And
there was one more really significant thing that maybe Korey should hit on, because there was a significant injury that going forward might be a bigger issue from this game than anything else we talked about.
We're going to definitely get to that, but we can jump to it. Korey, your draft favorite center, our stalwart center. The little good news with bad news. Obviously the bad news is he gets injured. Good news is it does not appear to be too serious. It's just an ankle injury. That the team is officially labeled week to week. So
the fact that it was a question of if he could play versus the Jets this week makes me feel a lot better, because like that they had to rule him out pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not season ending. It's for the guy's development, for this year, for everything. You just want to hope that he just isn't missing a whole year and it's not one of those kinds of injuries. And it looks like he could be back in 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm pretty happy about that. I kind of forgot about that. I saw once. I mean, we got Ryan Cullum starting this week, which is his own can of worms. But I'm just more so happy that it's not a season ender just for his sake, developmentally, and for just keeping continuity on the line.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the one offensive lineman, crazy. Think about it going into the year. You're thinking, oh God, rookie center. Well, what's going to go wrong? And he's been our best offensive lineman by far. I don't even think it's been close. Yeah. So definitely a loss there. Thank God it's minor. He was seen with a cast. And he's going around on one of those little scooters and all that around the locker room. So definitely not playing this week. From what I've been reading, the hope is that he's going to take these next 2 weeks off, have the bye week, and be back for week 10. So that seems to be the hope, is that his most realistic return time would be after the bye, which would give him plenty of time, to get over an ankle, you would hope. So with that,
will he have to get on a moving train then, or will the moving train not apply? Because does he get a different kind of ticket? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
People get really nervous when they hear the scooter stuff, where it's like, oh, can't even walk. They just do that a lot of the time, where like you just have to keep weight off for X amount of time, and then the second you're off it's all right. Brace it up, get it out there. Like it's People get really nervous on that. I saw some reactions to that, but being on the scooter is just a preventative measure where you don't have to throw someone on crutches. It's
Yeah,
just
it's
keeping
like
the
I don't
weight.
know if you guys have ever been on crutches. I'm sure Corey, you have. But when you weigh 120 pounds, being on crutches is not that big a deal. When you weigh 200 pounds, it's hard. It hurts like hell after a while. When you're 300 pounds, I imagine it's not the most fun. So why not have a rolling cart? By the way, on the subject of McCollum, just since we're on this, he's the equivalent of Beanie Bishop. He's a very experienced college player. He came from a college program, which I'm always fond of saying is maybe one of the top three offensive line factories in the NFL. I know that's where Dan Moore came from as well, but it's generally the A&M linemen are very well coached. So he's somebody that's probably not going to make a whole lot of mistakes, but the limitations of just who he is, he's not going to be Zach Frazier, but I don't think he'll be terrible. My expectation is that like he was in relief in the game, he was fine. So, but different kind of a test this week, as we'll get into with matchups.
Yep, yep. And since we kind of touched on Zach Frazier, let's kind of go ahead and run through what the early injury report looks like this week. Just for reference, Isaac Seumalo, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi all did not practice. It is all resting. There's nothing there. It's their typical veteran Wednesday to take the day off and be there for practice, but not actually do anything. Kind of a new one this week. Najee Harris popped up. He did not practice today with a rib injury. So feel a little bit better about that now that Jalen Warren's back and playing, who played decent. DeMonte KZ still did not practice with an ankle. Doesn't look like we'll see him. Nick Herbig, hamstring, did not practice. Doesn't feel like he's going to be back. We mentioned Zach Frazier. On the bright note, Alex Highsmith was going through another week of practice. We touched on this last week. He did light practices, but did not play. Could be trending back for this game as his actual return. So that would be a big help. Even though you got to give credit, Jeremiah Moon played pretty decent for his first NFL start with a big block on the punt too. So kudos to him for showing up big on his starting debut in the NFL. Michael Pruitt, full practice, so he's trending the right way. I don't think he ended up playing last week. I could be wrong, but if not, so. It looks like he's back in it for this week. As far as the Jets go, Michael Carter's didn't practice with a back. DJ Reed did not practice with a groin. That must have happened late in the game because I remember watching that fully, and he was in there for most of the game. Aaron Rodgers didn't practice. I'm guessing they say ankle, but I'm guessing it's just his typical not practicing on a Wednesday.
Injured ego was the official thing.
Injured ego. I like that. Mike Williams did not practice today. It's non-injury / personal related. You have to wonder how that Davante Adams is now a Jets, and it's kind of been floated out there that Williams is available if they're kind of just starting to phase Williams out of.
Well, Williams is already getting phased out. Basically, he had no chemistry with Rodgers. Mm-hmm. Rodgers didn't want to throw to him. And I don't know if you guys watched the game, the Monday night game, but it was like he was like making an effort to target Williams, and Williams just got worse and worse as the game went along. So that looks nothing like the Mike Williams from San Diego. So for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like it's worked out for him there.
Yep. Other than that, there's a few minor little things with light practices. I'd say the most notable ones, good God, ones are both offensive tackles showed up on the injury report. For Tyron Smith, it's supposedly a vet rest day. For Morgan Moses, it's a knee injury. So that I think that's worth noting. And then also Will McDonald went through a light practice with his shoulder. So guys, I think that are going to get highlighted here when we talk about matchups. I'll go ahead and kick it off there. If Alex Highsmith is back, I think Highsmith and TJ Watt are going to have another big day against Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Those guys have not been good for the Jets so far. Tyron Smith, was signed in the offseason to help the blind side, and that hasn't really happened yet. He's been better than what they had. Don't get me wrong, but he's given up 4 sacks through his, their first 6 games, which is a career high for him. Morgan Moses really hasn't played that well either. I feel like he gets around on his name a lot. Like he's solid, but he's not great by any means. But I think a healthy TJ Watt and even a 75% Highsmith, I think that could really give their outside or their tackles issues this week when we go up against them. Will, I'll throw it to you. What's a matchup you want to highlight?
Well, the aforementioned different story this week for the interior of the Steelers offensive line. Quinnen Williams, I think, is one of the top 5 interior defensive linemen.
That is one bad man.
Yeah, in the league. He's probably closer to top 2. But he's a problem. And he's one of those cats like Chris Jones that instead of, it's not like every play he's just going to come straight at you and, he's going to be aligned over your right guard and that's the guy that has to face him all week. It's basically more like he's moving around. They're doing stunts with him. There was a play in the game Monday night where he ran a stunt from tackle on one side of the field around the tackle on the other side and just completely knocked the guard ass over tea kettle. I mean, he made him flew back. As I said, it looked like a kung fu movie. Like it was some kind of a stunt from a film. That lineman just went flying backwards. And I just feel like that's an issue. And going back to what you just said about Morgan Moses and the TJ Watt and, Alex Highsmith and Tyron. I mean, it's a bigger problem if you have trouble stopping an inside guy. As big of a problem as TJ Watt can cause in the game. You got a veteran quarterback and you got ways you could chip that guy, whatever. An interior rusher is creating havoc. It's a bigger problem. It comes faster. It disrupts a lot more different kinds of plays. He can do it more or less, in the run game in the middle as well. So I don't know. I feel like they're both problems, one for the Steelers and one for the Jets.
Gotcha. Korey, what's a matchup you want to highlight?
I mean, who knows how much we'll throw to him, but George Pickens versus Sauce Gardner. I mean, it's like the Surtain matchup. You're due for something to happen. Like it's going to be tested. I don't know, the Jets team, when you look at the collection of parts, you think it should be really good. And it's just kind of, can't remember. There's a team like that last year that we really talked about it with. But it's one of those teams where, look at a lot of the pieces and think they should be really good. And there's kind of the very mediocre record. I think Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, those are 2 studs at the running back position. They have not been afraid to feed Braylon Allen a little if he gets going. Breece Hall's, kind of unanimously a top 5 back. And then they've got the receivers at skill positions too. So it's going to be on like Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson they're going to have to try and block off the middle of the field, let the D-line get pressure, make them keep it short, keep it to the outside. Rodgers isn't what he is mobility or what he used to be mobility wise. So that's going to have to be, don't let the short stuff in the middle and kind of intermediates. Don't let them catch and run. Make them just target the edges, make them kind of chew their way down the field. Don't give up the big plays, which is a lot easier said than done when Breece Hall's a 4-4 guy and you got Garrett Wilson and now they got Adams to push downfield. But that's going to be just their offensive skills they're legit.
Braylon Allen is faster than Breece Hall. Bryce, you know what I mean? You got one fast running back who was a top draft pick, and then you got another guy in who's even faster and bigger than that. So, yeah, their running back situation is the envy of the Steelers right now.
I mean, there's an argument that Isaiah Davis would be, doing what Najee would do, but a little better. But that's not here nor there. It's not. He's caught a lot of shit from us over the years. Don't want to do too much after.
We can't keep talking about replacing Najee while he's still in his last year. We all know it's probably going to happen anyway. So, we've kind of touched on it a few times that he's not the ideal back for.
Hey, listen, Najee has had in the course of like the last 8 games, he's faced some really bad run defenses and had really good games against them.
Mhm.
So, like, if your goal is to take what they give you, you're not necessarily going to produce a lot more than that, but you're going to look really good against a bad run defense. That's not nothing. That's better than some guys could do. But it's like it's just funny. Like they played maybe three of the worst run stopping teams this year. And towards the end of last year, they had that Seattle Cincinnati run where both those teams were struggling on defense. And those are like the biggest games he's had in his career. So it's either that he's rounding into form and the Steelers are, blocking better for him, or it's just that, they're taking advantage of bad run teams and bad teams in general, which is what this offense is designed to do.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, last thing I'll kind of highlight, you guys briefly touched on, I think it was Korey mentioned it. Well, with the addition of Davante Adams, the receiving options for the Jets get better across the board. Mainly because of what Adams brings to the table. He's a legit wide receiver that you have to focus on. So there's no more just looking at what Garrett Wilson's doing, for this team. So now you've got to defend both of those. Davante is, he's a Jet now. He's aiming to play. He practiced earlier, already this week. So it's like we're getting in my opinion, the three-headed beast. No one really talks about Allen Lazard, but he's been the model of consistency for Aaron Rodgers, and that is another guy that he has an obvious connection with. And if you would have told me Lazard was going to lead the league in touchdowns, he did entering this week anyway. I think he might still be, but I would have said, yeah, right. I was like, no way. But the Steelers have a lot to do there. Garrett Wilson is, he's not as big as the other two, but he's wiry. He's very tough to stay with. Davante has been the king of route running for as long as anyone can remember. And we all remember how deadly the Davante Adams Rodgers connection was in Green Bay. If they get 60% of that back for this week, the Steelers corners could be in a lot of trouble, because I like Porter and I like Jackson. I think they both done good jobs, but you're arguably playing, the top receiver in the league this week, and he makes corners just look bad week in, week out, especially when he's healthy. He's just so dang quick with his movement. So if he catches you over committing, it's like you're beat already. So our corners better bring their A games. Beanie Bishop, he better bring his A game too, because Lazard, while not as quick, he's a big body, and he is. I think Bishop is going to be giving up almost 6 inches in size this week. Because I think you've got a 6'3" wide receiver against a 5'10" slot corner again. So a lot to deal with there. But again, better be ready to come to play, because I know the Jets are. Since bringing Davante Adams over, that's all the talk has been about is, does Adams get them over the hump? This team looked a lot better this past Monday night with the change in, offense to a degree, with Saleh being gone and Hackett being demoted and Downing calling the plays. They looked much more cohesive. I'll tell you what, the running backs looked a lot better. Breece Hall finally looked like he started to get going. So Korey, you bringing up Hall, they were finally getting him in space and breaking out on some runs for him. So better be ready, because, this is a team that thought they had Super Bowl aspirations, and now they just added a top wide receiver. So we're going to be getting the Jets' best punch, no doubt. So any other matchups we want to touch on this week before we have a pivotal discussion about our most important position this week?
Just a quick thing about the Jets. Do either of you think, like, you look at the Jets against Buffalo, and I think this is like a typical fan thing. You watch the Jets play, and you think, oh, well, when we play them, we'll take advantage of this and that and the other, and they'll look like this. I mean, Buffalo is one of the best teams in the league. The Jets basically played toe to toe with them, essentially outplayed them in that game. It's funny how many people think oh, the Jets are like they're not that good and they're gonna be exposed in this game. I find myself thinking, yeah, it's a Sunday night game. Pittsburgh is probably going to win this game. But just as a general matchup, I'm not sure the Jets are a particularly good matchup for the Steelers. Like we talk about teams matching up against each other. Well, I don't think the Jets are a good matchup for the Steelers. Coming to this conclusion while we're talking tonight, and we can get into that more. But I wonder what you guys think.
You
Yeah,
know, I just I think they match up with us pretty well in the spots that they would want to. Like CJ Mosley's going to fill the run. Sauce Gardner can go with George Pickens. They they're going to be able to stop what we are going to want to do on offense. I think. I don't know. They have the guys to match up with what we want to do on offense. I'll say that. If we can pull it out on them, who knows what we're doing with the QB. That's a different story. But I think they probably feel good going into this game, probably better than we do personnel wise.
I would tend to agree, and I actually want to bring out one more guy matchup wise because I'm absolutely terrified of trying to defend this guy. Will McDonald on defense could give our offensive tackles a ton of issues. You talking about a guy who was taken in the first round, I think 2 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. 2 or 3 years ago, he has exploded onto the scene this year with his patented speed rush, which usually gives our guys absolute fits. So, I mean, we saw Max Crosby get completely around Broderick Jones without him even moving. Like that's how bad the play was. Thank God, Fields was back there and ran for a 14-yard gain or something. Because I was like, oh shit. Like, did that really just happen? Like he was Crosby was out of his stance and around Broderick Jones before he even registered it. So I'm really terrified if Will McDonald's rushing over Broderick Jones that he's going to be so quick that, similar issue, Jones is going to have to really make sure he gets out there quick. And then conversely, speed rushers have given Dan Moore issues too. So no matter where he lines up, I'm definitely concerned about those guys holding up in pass protection this week. But to answer your question, Will, no, I don't feel like we're built to take advantage of anyone right now from an offensive standpoint.
Sure enough, yeah.
So, that kind of brings us to, since we are talking about pass protection, there's quite a debate about who's actually going to be getting protection this week. Russell Wilson has ramped up, and it sure sounds like Steelers could be throwing him out there this week. Fields so far is kind of taking the high road as far as his Twitter goes. He just said good win or whatever. That's all he's really said on the matter. But this could be the week that Russell Wilson makes his Steeler debut. So I don't know if that's such a good idea, but at this point, I don't really know what we have to lose either, because we either need to see that Russell Wilson is going to elevate this team or not. Because if we throw him out there and he doesn't. We go back to Fields. But if he does, this team might have more life in it than maybe we even think. Just because there's certain things, obviously, that Russell Wilson brings to the table that Fields is not. Wilson is definitely more of a natural passer over his career. He's put up big numbers. He knows, even in his last year in Denver, where he got benched for the last 3 games, he threw more touchdowns combined than all of Steelers quarterbacks have done for the past 2 or 3 years within the season themselves. So that alone, he knows how to find the end zone with his arm. Fields knows how to find it with his legs most of the time. But I want to throw it to you guys. Who should be behind center? Will, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, I'm like you, I'm not entirely convinced that they're not being coy about this. It's possible. They generally they tell you ahead of time what they're going to do, and they do it. But it does seem like the door is at least open for some gamesmanship here, where they don't want the Jets to know who to prepare for, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, we might use both quarterbacks in the game. Yeah, whatever.
Right.
From my standpoint, I'm not. I don't know if I think that Russ Wilson is going to be so much better than Justin Fields for this team, the way they like to play offense, or if it'll look a whole lot different than it did before. They'll just be better at certain things and not as good at other things. But I suspect that, in the mind of the head coach, which is the only person that really matters in this situation, he sees Russell Wilson as the starter, and he's now back from injury. And the backup did a really good job of keeping the ship afloat, but now it's time for the starter to go back in. And it's always possible that the starter won't play well, and the backup, you'll be happy that you have this experienced backup to go back in the game. But I kind of feel like Russell Wilson will start. For the people who think, well, that means he's going to get sacked more because Justin Fields had to escape pressure, and he won't be able to use his legs. Well, first of all, Russell Wilson can still run the ball pretty well. He's not sort of the kind of athlete that Justin Fields is, or the kind of threat that Justin Fields is, but he's made some pretty good hay on scrambles, even in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So there's that. Secondly, if I recall correctly, played well against the Jets last year. So maybe that's part of the reason he's coming back in now. But I just feel like Justin Fields sort of creates some of that pressure because he avoids throws that he could anticipate and could make earlier, and therefore, he holds the ball into pressure. Sometimes he runs from a clean pocket out into pressure. And these are things that probably Russell Wilson won't do as much. So while there may be some more sacks because the offensive line doesn't hold up, he also probably has the ability to make more plays in the passing game.
Korey, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because Justin Fields is more talented than Russell Wilson at this stage, but Russell Wilson's a ceiling raiser for the offense right now, just because he's going to give you the ability to make, some more plays downfield. I think he's definitely, and I thought this before the season, he would be the person to unlock George Pickens, where, I mean, that's his thing, is throwing that deep ball that goes, 400 feet up in the air, falls like it's dropped from a helicopter. I mean, that screams George Pickens all over it. So, I came into this thinking Russell Wilson was the better quarterback. I didn't think the Steelers would be the team to unlock Justin Fields, which they haven't been. He's been solid, but he's been basically what he has been for the most part, just, little less turnovers. And so, I just kind of think that I don't really care what happens. I know we need a new guy in the future anyways. And just kind of willing to see how Wilson goes this year. And I'm not married to either of these guys. Like, Wilson comes out and plays well, awesome. Still need a new guy. If Fields hangs on and is still, 14 for 25 every week and rushing for 50 yards, you still need another guy. So I think Wilson's the ceiling raiser. I could be wrong. If he comes out and stinks, then put Fields back in. But, I know one way or another, we're going to need another guy. So I don't really care too much what happens, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a bit of a cop out, so I don't like your answer. But
no, it is really the point, though.
No.
It kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't. I had mixed feelings about like what would I like to see happen, and I just feel like I'm not really sure. Like, I think I would like people to see that a quarterback who can make plays from the pocket is probably ultimately more valuable than what Justin Fields does on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But because I'd like to make the point that just because you can run and make plays in the run, as a running quarterback, doesn't mean it's better to have that skill set. That I think I would like to, I guess the part of me that wants to be right would like to think that that's a factor. But as Korey said, I don't think, no matter what Russell Wilson does in this game, I'm not really seeing him being the Steelers quarterback next year, unless he literally comes in and lights it up like Patrick Mahomes or Ben Roethlisberger, in which case, then sure, you could try to squeeze a couple more years out of Russell Wilson, draft a guy to be his replacement after that, and then your quarterback situation's in good hands. But barring that, there's almost no outcome that really moves the needle very much. It's just, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
I'll give a bit more firm of an answer. If they let Justin Fields go out, and I don't even care if there were interceptions, if they let him come out and play like that 2019, 2020 version of Jameis Winston, where, you get like bonehead interceptions, but you're also going to get a dude with a cannon ripping throws downfield. You're going to put up points. You might hurt the defense. Defense might get put on the field quick. You might do this, but that Bucks offense was good. Like, he threw like 5,000 yards and like 35 touchdowns and 31 interceptions, but it was a good offense by that outcome. So
I was at the game where they put up like 50 on the Rams at the Coliseum.
Yeah. Were you really? Wow.
Yeah.
If they let Fields play like that, just let him use the gifts. I'd say even if it was shaky, even if we're putting up the same amount of points, I'd say let him roll with Fields. But it's clear with this head coach, at least, who's not going anywhere, that they're not going to get the best version of Fields out. So I would rather just see Wilson at this point, see if he can be, the ceiling raiser for the team. And if he comes out and stinks, then, I'm not going to be pissed off watching Justin Fields kind of autopilot this thing to inevitable first round playoff loss, because we're going to face a team who's, a bit more aggressive, a bit more competent, I would say, in the bigger moments. So, yeah, I want to see Russell. We know what Justin Fields is with Mike Tomlin, but, in 20 years, I'm going to be thinking, what if we let Justin Fields and we unchained him? Just let him see what happened. But we won't know that here.
No. And to answer the question myself, I want to see Russell Wilson. I think quarterback, in this league is more cerebral than, any other level of quarterback, whether college, high school, all that. There is so much you have to know to play quarterback in this league. You have to know where your hot is. And I still think Justin Fields struggles with that at times, where he's like, oh shit, pressure, and default is run around and then make something happen. As where a lot of other quarterbacks in this league will know, I know exactly where I'm going with this ball. And I think you still get that from Russell Wilson. You also show an ability to just hit the check down. That's something Fields hasn't really done a lot of yet, when it's his safety valve to a degree. So I kind of want to see those two things come back in the offense. I'm definitely a fan of, like you guys said, his deep ball. His deep ball's been excellent ever since he's came into the league. We actually have like two guys that we might actually be able to use that in like George Pickens and Calvin Austin. So it'd be nice to like try to add that to the offense, because right now, honestly, the offense is boring in a sense, because we just try to move the chains. That's all we really try to do. There's nothing more to it than that. We don't try to take shots. If we take a shot, it's just because it's open. It's not because you feel like it was designed that way. Outside of the Atlanta game at the beginning of the year, Pickens got loose on a few deep ones, but other than that, I don't really feel like we've done a whole lot in the deep passing game. So I want to see what Russell Wilson can do with this team too.
Can he make Calvin Austin into Tyler Lockett? That's the question, right? You would think, you'd hope, best case scenario is he could make your number 2 wide receiver really stand out rather than just be an afterthought.
Right. Well, and then building on this really quickly, if Russell Wilson were to come in, clearly show an evolution in the offense and show that we're able to start doing some more things, because it's been floated out there already this week by several sources with the wide receiver market, the way it's gone with Adams moving to the Jets, obviously, Amari Cooper getting traded to the Bills. Seems like there could be some wide receivers on the moves. A name that has popped up is DeAndre Hopkins. Would DeAndre Hopkins really elevate this team if Russell Wilson is able to come in, starting to elevate the passing? Even on a 1-year rental, because it's worth noting that, he is a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd have to give up for him. Clearly, it's a different scenario than Adams and Cooper, because they were both under contract for a few more years here. They've got a pretty good contract there. You won't have to negotiate a new contract or anything. It would be a firm, well, we're just going to take him for the rest of the year, because the Titans are 1-5 now. So you have to start wondering how much longer they're going to hold on to, he's just a nice piece for Levis to develop, or we could potentially get a draft pick for him when we know we're not going anywhere. So
By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Levis moves at the trade deadline.
Really?
Sure, because the coach hates him and they're prepared. He never wanted him when he came in, and they're 1-5. So it's like, yes, you can still try Levis out there and see if something happens with him, but I believe there's some teams in the league that would take a chance on him, much like they took a chance on Justin Fields. I mean, the situation isn't all that different between Fields and where Levis is right now. So there's a lot of talent there. Hasn't played well, and there's friction in the staff, and he doesn't seem like that's the right fit for him. So,
out of curiosity, where do you think Levis would be a good fit if he is available at the trade deadline, and they're in the whole Mason Rudolph can autopilot this thing to a high draft pick type of deal?
I think like if Miami, can't find it, they would take any quarterback they could find right now. I think
That's true.
If they can afford. They have no future necessarily planned, especially if Tua doesn't. If this is it for Tua, they're sunk. So yeah, maybe they're going to tank and pick somebody high in the draft next year. But even in that scenario, I don't think it would hurt to have a guy like Levis to develop also. And it feels like, in a more offensive minded system, he might work a little better than he works in a system where, it's all about the ball control and you never get into a rhythm. Because I think that's a really hard thing for a guy that has more of a gunslinger mentality in terms of his makeup, his very aggressive kind of personality. That feels like that would fit better in a team that played offense more, less risk averse. So I'm not saying he would work there, but I'm saying if anybody could make it work, it's someone like that or an Andy Reid or whatever. So I do feel like the Titans will probably look to move him, and might not be the worst outcome for them if he does move on.
See, just throwing another team out there really quickly before I want your take, Korey, on the Hopkins deal. Seattle would be a very interesting choice there because Geno Smith's contract might only have one more year on it after this year if he's not a free agent. That could be an ideal situation for him to kind of sit and learn and develop there too. So who knows?
Especially Geno's a guy that, struggled early in his career and has figured out a way to come around to being a solid NFL starter. So there's a perfect example of a guy to think, well, I'm going to try to, do what he did to get better. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's possible, but maybe it's worth it.
Yeah. So Korey, would DeAndre Hopkins help move the needle if the Pittsburgh passing attack were not to take off? Would he be an addition worthy regardless of, whether Wilson comes in and lights the world on fire, or just kind of does what we expect him to do?
I don't think so, and here's why. It's just that Arthur Smith, kind of wherever he's been, hasn't really shown that he's elevating and getting the most out of his receivers. And because of that, I just, even unless it's for nothing, and even then, kind of depends on where we are, depends how good we look. I just kind of question how much Arthur Smith can even utilize another guy. I don't think he really cared to get another receiver. So, a stud running back would help this offense more than, probably Brandon Ayuk would, just because you're not going to get the targets for that receiver. You're not going to push the ball downfield. So you might as well, if you're going to run the ball 30 times a game, you might as well have a bell cow. So I don't know. If it's for nothing, I'm not going to throw a fit about it. It probably would be for nothing, but I don't think it's this big spectacular move that's going to open up the offense, because, we only, if you look at the target or the catches every week, it's 3 catches for a running back, a tight end, and George Pickens.
Yeah, right.
So it's even plugging in another receiver. It's how much are you really getting out of them?
No, I mean, the one theoretically available guy whose name has been bandied around that would probably make some kind of a difference would be DK Metcalf, because of the chemistry with Russell Wilson and his ability to throw the deep ball, and the fact he's a really good blocker. So there wouldn't be the temptation to play some other receiver ahead of him because he's a better blocker in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a pipe dream, and that would be expensive. That would be more expensive probably than the trade for Davante Adams that just happened. So I would think DK Metcalf is worth more than as good as Davante Adams is with his contract situation and age, that DK Metcalf would be worth more. So you're really, that's like a Minka Fitzpatrick trade to save never had a losing season. That's not good. But would it help? Would it make a difference in the team? Maybe, because it more closely fits what they would like to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's worth noting, I think Metcalf signed a deal either this offseason or the offseason prior. So his contract is locked in, and it's not like top of the market money. Like, he definitely kind of took a little bit of a discount compared to what some of these other receivers have been getting recently too.
And that means the price tag and trade is higher.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it would have to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
Just because of where Metcalf is in his career. He's a young, good playmaker, a guy who's probably going to see another contract, a big contract. So that would definitely be fun. But like you said, kind of a pipe dream.
Yeah, you're giving up you're giving up the possibility of drafting a franchise quarterback next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a situation that none of us want to pass on, giving the current crop of quarterbacks in Pittsburgh. So, but with that being said, there are some other games this week that we should look at. There's actually quite a few good games, some big games around the league. Let's start off with a big one right now. Houston is headed to Green Bay. I think it's a battle of 5-1 versus 4-2. So Green Bay is at home, favored by 2.5. Korey, I'll let you start off.
Two good teams, two teams that like to push the ball down the field and put points up. I think Green Bay, they've really, it's a guy that, we didn't talk about a ton. I think his name's Evan Williams, the safeties. I think he's out of Northwestern. If I'm recalling.
Evan Williams is Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon.
Yeah, one of my guys during the draft that I liked. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has been phenomenal. I don't know how much you've seen from kind of Packers eyes on him, but he's been phenomenal for them. One of the better safeties in the league. And I think they're just kind of in a groove. I really like their team makeup. They're at home, which is why I think I'm just typically leaning towards them. I think the Texans are, very good team as well. But two good teams just kind of tend to take the home team on it. Lambeau Field's a nice home field advantage. I'm going, even though it's 2.5, I think I'm still going Green Bay.
All right, Will.
I don't think the Texans have really been hitting on all cylinders lately. They're in a little bit of a lull compared to last year. They got on that run last year, and they were really, I think, in a way, a better team last year, even though they added guys this year and you feel like they got better in the offseason. It hasn't quite clicked together yet. It probably will before the season's out. And, this is typical of teams that make the playoffs and, feel like they have a good possibility. They don't necessarily play the same in, the early part of the season that they're going to play later in the season. But I think on the contrary, Green Bay is a team that really we're firing all cylinders right now. So I like the Packers to win this game. Probably an entertaining game. And it may go back and forth a little bit, but I expect that Green Bay, like Korey said, with the home field and the fact that they're really playing well and the Houston is not necessarily playing as well as it could, that to me means a Packers victory.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're all going to agree on here. I think Houston missing Nico Collins is kind of a bigger deal than
people. Yeah, they forgot about that even.
Think about it with him going on IR. Houston looked good last week because they played the Patriots. Congratulations, the Patriots freaking suck. While I do think this will be a close game, I like Green Bay here. It's funny, you said Evan Williams. It's a guy to highlight, guy who I really liked in the pre-draft process as well. Talk about the other safety too. Xavier McKinney leads the league in interceptions. He's had an interception in every single game he's played in this year. That's unreal. He's playing at a very high level. Really, the Green Bay defense is just playing well as a unit right now.
Yeah,
they still have the guys that can get after it. Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark. I was about to say, I'm trying to remember the nose tackle's name. He's still, there might have gone my camera, but they're still playing good ball. But then honestly, what Matt LaFleur has been able to do with kind of a juggling game on his wide receiver room right now. is who's injured, who's not. He's been getting the best out of that room every single week. Dobbs stepped up big with 2 touchdowns. Christian Watson returned to the lineup. He's a field stretcher. He's a guy that a lot of us were high on in the draft process. Jaden Reed being extremely good. Feels like they're starting to get the running game going a little bit too. Josh Jacobs definitely has been playing better recently. But just kind of like Green Bay. I feel like they're going to have a better game plan and take the dub. Talk about another highly anticipated matchup. Detroit is headed to Minnesota for basically what's going to kind of set forth what's going to be the very interesting race for the NFC North crown towards the end of the year. Minnesota is at home and they're favored by 1.5. Detroit did just lose Aiden Hutchinson, and if you haven't seen the injury, if you're squeamish, I suggest you don't, because that is. If you remember the Cole Holcomb injury from 2 years ago, that's exactly what happened to Aiden Hutchinson. So, preface there. If you want to go find it, congratulations, go for it. You can go find it. If not, stay away. We'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, I think these may not be the 2 best teams in the NFL, but they are the 2 teams that have played the best so far relative to who they've played and all that kind of stuff. I think Minnesota is just a little bit better, even with Aiden Hutchinson, at least right this second. And I have been, come around on the Lions. I appreciate what they've been doing, but I think Minnesota is a tough matchup. I expect these 2 teams to split their division series, and I feel like first part of that is Minnesota wins at home.
Mm-hmm.
Korey?
Yeah, Minnesota's coming off the bye. They get their home game. It just feels like Will said, it's going to be one of those ones where they split. They're both 2 good teams, but Minnesota coming off the bye. They are coming off a bye, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson. So I was pretty sure that.
You can play him this week, Korey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Coming by, they're at home. Lions are coming off a tough game. It just kind of seems like this is the game Minnesota gets, so then the Lions will get the next one. So I'm going with Minnesota here.
I'm taking the Lions for all the reasons you guys didn't. I feel like they're going to go out there and try to win a game for Aiden Hutchinson coming off that bad injury. Just kind of gut feeling. They're going to give Minnesota all they can handle. Minnesota really did not play well versus the Jets before the bye, so I feel like the armor is starting to show some cracks. Not saying that there's a ton, but I think the Jets did do a few things that limited what Minnesota can do. I think Detroit is that. I don't think their defense is as good as the Jets, don't get me wrong, but it just feels like offensively they're rolling right now. And so Minnesota's going to have to play their best game. Brian Flores is going to have to come up with a really great game plan to stop the 2-headed running attack of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Not to mention all the wide receivers are contributing now. Laporta is starting to kind of play like the guy we saw he was last year. He's starting to get a little bit more involved in the offensive game plan. So I like Detroit here. Then they'll cover. We're talking about 1.5 points, so it's not like it's a coin flip, but just kind of like Detroit. We'll see how many kneecaps they bite this week. Another really good matchup. Baltimore headed to Tampa Bay. Baltimore is favored by 3.5. I'll start off with this one. I'm going to go with Baltimore. I hate to say it. I want to pick Tampa Bay because, they're our rivals, but I will give both these teams credit. They have been really firing offensively the past few weeks. Tampa Bay just put up 51, which is the 4th most points they've ever put up in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. Baltimore, it just seems like that offense has just really been a well-oiled machine right now. If it's not Flowers getting you, it's likely getting you. If it's not likely, hell, even Rashad Bateman has come alive this year and started to contribute to the passing game a little bit. Mark Andrews finally got involved. But the big thing is Derek frickin' Henry. Tampa Bay has not been that great against the run this year, and I think that's the big difference. A balanced attack could really make it tough for Tampa Bay to completely cover. Even though Tampa Bay's defense did see the return of Antoine Winfield this past week, which if I would have picked him up in my one league as my defensive player, I would have won. I contemplated it, went with someone else, and it did not work out. I lost. So that would have been the difference there. But I like Baltimore, even though I think Tampa Bay is doing some really good things with Bucky Irving getting kind of more of the nod over Rashad White. I'll throw it to you, Will. What do you think on this one?
I think I'm taking all favorites tonight, which is unusual for me. I always got like a secret backdoor funny, but I'm going to play chalk tonight. I think I would take the over in this game. I don't think Baltimore's defense is, they're still trying to figure it out a little bit. I don't really think it's personnel from them. I think they're just adjusting to life without Mike McDonald, and it hasn't really come together entirely for them. But even so, they're still a pretty good defense, but their offense is tough. So Tampa Bay, borderline top 10, top 15, top half of the league defense. But what Baltimore does is like a different animal. And as you said, you didn't even mention Mark Andrews, who possibly came alive. Like they finally ignored him long enough that the defenders are like, okay, we're not going to worry about that guy. So you ignore Mark Andrews at your own peril. So yeah, I feel like I've been trying to starting to beat this drum the last couple of weeks. Everybody in Steelers land who thinks we have the Ravens number and Lamar never plays good against us, and we're going to win at least one game against the Ravens, maybe two. You haven't been paying attention to what this team looks like right now. Yes, it's possible that the Steelers will continue to get better and the Ravens will not be as good later by the time they play them. But right now, it looks like a pipe dream to get a game from the Ravens. I don't think those games will be close right now. But things have a way of working out differently in the AFC North. Anyway, Ravens over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is off to a good start. Bad matchup for them.
Yeah, Korey?
Yeah, I don't know. Something in my gut's saying Tampa Bay. I think the Ravens are better. It's a night game. You get going to Tampa Bay, and I don't know. I just kind of think the pivot to Bucky Irving and kind of Sean Tucker, I think that's going to be give them some more juice than they've even had. Chris Godwin's been phenomenal. Mike Evans is Mike Evans, and I don't know. It's just I like what the Bucs are doing. I don't think it's a great matchup for the Ravens or versus the Ravens, but I don't know. Something's just telling me Tampa Bay is going to get it. I think it'll kind of be a weird game, and I'll take Tampa Bay to just win outright.
Yeah, Godwin.
By the way, the other bet to take is the over on number of references to the hurricane.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, put money on that and then send it to disaster relief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they definitely need it. So our best wishes with everyone who's been affected by these past two hurricanes. I got friends obviously down there, and Korey, I'm sure you do too, being a Florida guy. So I hope everyone's doing okay. But I was going to say Godwin's return to the slot for Tampa Bay has been monumental. He is really killing it there. And honestly, that's where he was at his best, in his years, in my opinion. It wasn't playing outside. It was his ability to flip in and do that. So one of the reasons I put up there is I figured it'd be one of the best games this week. So last one I'll go to is, I'll skip that one. Seattle is coming to Atlanta. Two teams that have been playing good ball. Atlanta's at home, favored by 3. Will, I'll start you with that one.
I'm going to go. Who's favored?
Atlanta by 3.
There we go. I'll take Atlanta.
And you and your truck dog.
No, I think Atlanta. They're starting to believe in themselves a little bit. I don't know if it's just a transitional thing that they'll get over by the end of the season. But I think especially offensively, they're really starting to pick it up. And I'm a little bit amazed having seen what they look like for the first week of the season. But as we said prior to that game, they have weapons. They got the pieces. So it just was a question of maybe giving them some time to get it together. So I'll take Atlanta in this game. Seattle, it's kind of doing what they always do, which is they start off super strong and then slowly fade as the year goes on, and they seem to have begun that already.
All right, Korey.
Yeah, I was laughing. Seattle went 3-0, then 0-3, and I don't know. It's kind of I just think they're a better team than the Falcons. The Falcons are talented, but I'm still not really a true believer yet. I think Seattle's going to get this one. They've been banged up in the secondary, which is gonna affect them all year. But I don't think the Falcons are necessarily the team to punish them on that. And so I'm gonna take the Seahawks here. I think they're just better overall, but it's
Okay.
not one of those things where the Falcons win wouldn't surprise me at all. Fun fact: did you know on 30 less carries, Tyler Algier only has 70 less yards, and he's almost averaging a yard better per carry than Bijan Robinson. Just
Wow.
some food for thought. Yep.
Well,
For
that's that argument we get into with Warren for the Steelers. Jalen Warren, it's like, well, he's not starting the game. He's not getting, wound down, and he's not getting as many carries late in the game when teams are expecting you to run. So yeah, I do think that helps a little bit. But Algier's just a good player. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's like bringing in 1A, not bringing in your number two.
Yes.
Yeah, and for that reason, that's honestly why I'm taking Atlanta. It feels like their offense is really starting to get on a roll. Kirk Cousins, had a monster game. 2 weeks ago when they played Tampa Bay on Thursday night. Had a good game this past week too, but they ran the ball so much they didn't really need Cousins to do as much as he has. So with both of those things really going, I just like Atlanta's mojo right now. It seems like that when they need a play, they find a play right now. And that's so underrated in this league. We lived off of it for years with Ben, just finding and making a play when we need it the most. So I feel like Atlanta's got that right now, and that's why I'm going with Atlanta. With that being said, let's get to our 5-star matchup of the week. The New York Jets are headed to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's see here. Oh, shoot. I did not write the lineup there. I always write
Oh, the Jets by 1.5.
the Jets by 1.5. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Korey, I'll let you start off. How does this one go?
I think the Jets are poised to give us some trouble, but short week for them. It's at home. I could see there being a bit of a spark if there is a switch to Russell Wilson. If they put him in, they're going to throw it. And I think if they're just planning on running the ball, Fields will be in there. But I think if Wilson goes in there, they're going to let him throw it. I think Pickens will be playing with a bit of a chip on his shoulder if that happens. I think there's just a lot of outside the personnel reasons that kind of point towards the Steelers that I'm going to take them here. I'm going to say like a 27-24 kind of win. Maybe, I don't know, 27, 29, 26, something funky like that. But I think we put up a decent chunk of points. And because if we leave Fields in, that means we're running the ball. And if we get Wilson, then I think we're going to get some air yards. So I think one way or another, I think we're going to be able to put up some points this week. And I think that, I think their offense might actually be thrown a little out of sync, even with Adams, as good as he is, just because, it seems like they start to get something going. And then now you've got a whole, big piece to kind of just throw in there. So, I think it'll be a tough game. I don't think this will be a walk in the park by any means, but I think we win this just because of a couple of the external factors pointing towards us.
Interesting. So what was your official score prediction there? Sorry.
I'll give it 29-26, something a little weird.
Yeah, that's weird. All right. Will, what's your prediction?
That was all very, very well. It sounded real nice, Corey. I just feel like I feel like you're loosey with the football at Thanksgiving. Like we think the Steelers are going to play a different brand of offense just because they're changing quarterbacks. Come on, man. What team have you been watching? Like, yes, they should throw the ball more, with Russell Wilson, but I will settle for throwing more effectively. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be better. I also feel like the issues along the offensive line and the lack of wide receiver talent is the kind of thing that will come into play, and eventually before it's like you get sort of a grace period with backup players playing, but if they say you're starters for too long, then it's more likely that at some point they'll cause some problems. So, I'm going back and forth with this. I think when the Steelers game was first over last week, I thought the Jets will cover, and I figured they would be an underdog and that they would cover but not win. And the line moved at some point to the Jets being the favorite in this game. So I can't have that feeling anymore about it. But I do think it just may take a minute for Russell Wilson's integration into the offense to really show dividends. And here's the thing to keep in mind. They're not playing the Raiders this week, right? They're playing the Raiders defense this week. I think Russell Wilson could totally light it up and do more than you. I mean, that could have been an offensive explosion against a defense that's that bad. But the Jets defense isn't that bad. In fact, I think they're better than even really how they play. They're capable of being better than that. So I feel like when the Steelers are on defense, in theory, the edge rushers could make a difference in this game because I do think that's a good matchup for the Steelers. But I feel like with the addition of Davante Adams, the biggest difference that it makes is the Steelers are going to have to back up their pass defense enough so that the checkdowns to Bijan Robinson, Breece to Breece Hall are going to be so much more effective than they would be if you didn't have as much of a deeper threats going on. So I feel like you see the Jets, how Buffalo played them on defense, even without Davante Adams. They're worried about Aaron Rodgers attacking them down the field. It opened up those short passing lanes for them, and they had a couple of good plays on it. So I feel like that's a thing that you don't think about. Even if you think the Steelers their pass rush can get there before the deep balls hit, well, they're still got a chance. You see the pass rush coming, you dump it off. They're running back in the flats, and then you got a guy who's a little bit of an athletic mismatch for, maybe not for Logan Wilson, but I don't know how much Logan Wilson on Breece Hall you'll actually see in this game. So that makes me feel like there's a little bit of an issue there. And then on the other side, like I said, like we said earlier, it feels like the Jets defense, they're not going to be the movable object that the Raiders were. And it's just they're kind of strong where the Steelers like to play. They have Sauce Gardner to at least mitigate George Pickens, and they have, the right defense to be able to deal with someone like Najee Harris running it. Quinn Williams in the middle, man. Tough. So I'm going to say it's a close game. I do agree about that part, what Korey said. I'm going to call it 24-19 Jets. I just feel like the Steelers might have an opportunity to win the game or feel like it's close late in the game and the Jets put it away. So that's unfortunately not what I had hoped to be saying on this podcast. After all, it's a Sunday night game. Probably, it's a Sunday night game. They should revert to their usual standards of winning on Sunday night. They didn't last time, but I'm just not sure it's the right week to predict that they're going to win.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I kind of side with Will on this one. I'm just not sure. One, if Fields is the quarterback, I don't know if we can do enough offensively to really back the Jets off. And then with Wilson coming in, how much rust is there going to be? I know he's been ramping it up in practice for 2 weeks, but, it's a completely different story. When you hit the field against a defense that's been game planning against you all week. I also think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a big thorn in our side because if there's one thing he can still do, it's still do the pinpoint quick pass game. And that has been an issue for us this year. We've shown the inability to really cover stuff over the middle. I mean, just look at the one player that actually did pretty well against us last week, Brock Bowers. He had a pretty big game. I think Lazard could kind of fill that role to a degree. Conklin's a nice, run pass catch threat. He's not the dynamic athlete, that you come across a lot of times, but he's reliable. But then the fact that you have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams out there, I think that makes just playing defense that much harder because it's not like you can double them both. So, and Pittsburgh does what Pittsburgh does. It doesn't feel like we game plan a whole lot defensively. Sometimes it feels like we're just gonna put our best five out there and try to beat your best five type of deal. Kind of a basketball reference there. I just don't like it this week.
Hey man, wouldn't it be awesome if Korey is right and they uncork the offense like a champagne bottle and Russell Wilson comes in despite not really having played with any of the other offensive pieces on the team, comes in on Sunday Night Football before the home crowd and like announces that the Steelers are a real contender. They blow out the Jets with an offensive explosion. Yeah, that would be an amazing story. If that happens, that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah.
I just feel like the more, even just hearing myself say that, having it come out of my mouth just feels like, okay, that doesn't feel like a story that I'm going to be talking about next week.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like that way for me too. So the score I was kind of thinking of, I do feel like it's going to be a close game. It's going to be back and forth because I think Pittsburgh will have some success on defense because of the outside edge rushers. I think there's going to be even interior. Like I'm not too worried about the Jets' offensive line overall. Like they have good players. Don't get me wrong. Elijah Vera Tucker's a very good right guard. Tittman's a decent second-year center. Kind of forgetting the other left guard's name off the top of my head. John Simpson, who I actually don't think is that good, but you have to roll with someone when it comes to your starting five. So I think we can win across the line there, but how much do the Jets take advantage of it? So I like 23-17. I just think we'll come up just short, kind of like we did against Cowboys, honestly. So Cowboys put together 2 drives at the end of the game to make the difference, and then Pittsburgh couldn't really move the ball when they needed to. So hate to be a negative Nancy, but that's just kind of the boat I'm on this week. And I think the Jets are especially rejuvenated with the new coaching staff in there, the offense running things a little differently than what they had the first few weeks. And then with the addition of Adams, I just think the energy's there right now. It would have been different, if we would have had like one other legit receiving threat with an open offense, I'd have been like, yeah, I like Pittsburgh here. But until I see anything different than what we've run on offense really the last few years, where we're going to try to play mistake-free football and capitalize on it that way, just think it comes back and bites us in the ass this week. So 23-17 Jets.
Can I just ask for one thing from the NFL? Can we not have a Sunday night game super late? Can we not start 2 hours late and then have the Steelers lose anyway, so that I have to like suffer through the last hour of the game while I'm dying? I would appreciate that.
That would never happen.
That would never happen. Oh my God. Let's not have another debacle like that.
Yeah, no, that was definitely no fun. So, well, with that being said, thank you for listening to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith has spoken on the message boards, joined by Wil Masisak and Korey Karbowsky. Well, I don't know what you're doing right now.
I don't know either.
It's throwing me off.
Sorry, dude.
Check out the video version so you know what I'm talking about this week. SteelerFury.com. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I still want to see Russell Wilson. We need to see what he has in the tank, and just to kind of solve this controversy that we find ourselves in, ironically, almost midway through the season. So we have to pick one and go with him. So with that being said, here we go, Steelers.
Here we go.